Good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening, folks. Today we are doing part 7 of the marketing automation migration. If you remember in the first few episodes of this, we talked about why, evaluating the products that are out there, inventorying Amazon SES, and getting that set up. Then the marketing automation system, we have all of that. We completed in the last, I think it's the last episode, we did the completion of the marketing automation system. And so now we are at the testing phase. This is the last section of the deployment portion, which has lasted a fair amount of time. So let's first go into Mautic and take a look around, see if things are working as expected. We see lots and lots of activity here, which is good. It means the website tracking is working. Let's go ahead and check in on our leads. And very quickly, I can see there aren't any new leads. So that's a little bit of a concern. Well, what's going on there? My guess is we need to do a quick test. So I'm going to go to the website, see what's happening here. I'm also going to pull up on my second monitor. I'm going to pull up Google Analytics. One of the things that is important to do when you're testing anything is to turn on Google Analytics and go into its real-time features. This will tell you web activity. So let's go to my website, go to real-time. I want to do overview. And let's look at content. Okay, so we're on the website here. One thing that you can do with a Gmail account, you may not know this, is that if you take your average Gmail account, Gmail ignores by default anything after a plus sign. So if I wanted to write a test account, and that would still go somewhere valid, I would add a plus sign here and call it testing 1. And that way, this will still work. I will still get an email, my regular Gmail account, but I can use this to create multiple Gmail accounts. So let's do. So now I've created effectively a very basic mailing list. I'm going to take just this first email address. I'm going to plop it in the form here. Hit submit and see what happens. Okay, it's gotten my subscribe, and I saw that it went to Publicaster, but I did not see it send to my Mautic install. It was not there. So let's take a look at this form. Why did it not do that? I suspect, let's take a look here. Yep, there's the problem. Right here, this conditional logic section says, you use this confirmation if all the following match. So I'm going to need, there's a blank value there. Email addresses should all have an @ sign in them. So let's save this confirmation now. And let's do a quick test. Here's my email. And now let's see what happens if this form submits properly. Oh, okay. So I've gotten a notice here that this did not send correctly. So that means we need to go and troubleshoot inside of the API. How do we get this to work correctly? And then what URIs are allowed API access? Well, let's go back to our form. Choose my website. All right. Let's do another test. That's still throwing an error too. So now, the next part of any decent troubleshooting is we go Google for it and figure out what's going on here. I'm using software called Gravity Forms. And let's see. How to submit data to without all auth integration, simply create forms with the same fields in Mautic and add a curl call to send the Gravity Form data to Mautic as well. Oh, that's easy. To add another method, it handles the current form submission as well. So there's an entire class somebody wrote that will ship all this data. Okay, so we're going to have to do some coding to make this work. Fortunately, this is a very simple, straightforward piece of code here someone has written already. We're just going to make use of it. Let's go ahead and create a function here. If you're not a coder, this is probably the time to stop watching. So there's our function. And now we need to .mautic.com, form submit form ID. Okay, so we need to match the names of the fields in the form with Mautic. First name, last name, email, title, company. I don't think this is actually probably... We're going to need to... Yeah, I think it's going to require a bit more coding than we're going to have time for in this demo. Let's put this on pause. So, in the last hour, and that's about how long it took to write this code very, very badly, I should add, what I'm going to try doing, because we're running into... what I think is happening is this. With Mautic, it's sending what's called a GET request, where you see the actual data inside the URL, and I'm fairly certain that that's probably not... The platform doesn't accept that. It wants what is called a POST request. These are technical terms. So what I've done is write some code that first here cleans up and de-hacks fields in case someone's trying things like SQL injection, and then prepare an array of the fields that we're processing for my existing system, prepare it for the new system, then create post variables, and then get ready to actually send them. So we're going to actually upload this file to my web server. And this is admittedly it's probably not the best way to do this, but I'm also not a particularly good programmer, so that is how we're going to tackle this. And now, instead of trying to make this software do it exactly like this, we're going to change this to double post. We'll call this double post instead. And this goes to my web server. And now we're going to change these query variables. So we know what the variables are. That's first name, last name, email, title, company, Twitter handle. Now this will accept the data and shove it somewhere. And then what we want to do is at the very end of this process, after we've sent data to both places, we want to do a header redirect, which I don't remember how to header redirect. I don't remember the exact syntax of it. That's all right. That's what Google's for. There we go. So since none of this data is pushing anything to the web page, we can say send to thank you page. And then we go and get my newsletter thank you page. Get that URL, pop it into the location. And we take our and now we test it again. We'll see if this, in fact, does actually work. So, save confirmation. Preview the form. And we're going to use a different testing email here. Let's use this one. And see what happens. It says that was not happy. Unable to handle request. I wonder why. What if there's a bug in the code? Yep, there is. I forgot the closing. Semicolons. Let's use my formatter, which is something that you should do to clean up your code and make it easier to read. You can see now. All right, now we can try this. Preview form. Fill it in. Let's see what happens. Okay, so it went, the thank you page process. Now we need to log into Publicaster and see if it received the data. Yep, you can see it right there. It received the data, so we know that form worked. Now we need to go over to Mautic and go to the dashboard. Now let's see if Mautic received data or not. So we know the code works because it accepted the data from into Publicaster. What we don't have working, however, is the Mautic side. So we will need to continue to troubleshoot this to figure out exactly why it's not working. We know the code itself is sound because otherwise Publicaster would not have accepted the data. So the next thing we need to do probably is open a trouble ticket and figure out exactly why it's not accepting these fields, because there's no reason why it shouldn't be. I'm going to double check the form just in case. We got the correct input names. Actually, we may not. Looking at these fields, the names in the form field are different. So let's try. See here it says Mautic form first name is the name of the field. So we may simply have Mautic form first name, Mautic form last name, email address, job title, company name, and Twitter handle. We save that, go back to our form, preview it. Let's choose a different email from the list, the testing list this time. Let's do number 5. And see what happens. So we've gotten the post to go through there. Nope, it is still not accepting the data. So this is definitely time for trouble ticketing. So while we trouble ticket this portion of the testing cycle, you can see there's a lot that goes into testing to make sure all of these codes are working, that the forms are working and such like that. There will be a solution to this. I'm not going to continue to record basically what's troubleshooting at this point. But you see how important QA is and why you can't just turn off and switch over a system, because there is a possibility, as we're seeing now, if I just cut over a system instead of testing it rigorously, I could be losing data. So make sure that as a general best practice that you have plenty of time set aside to figure out exactly what's going on with your service and making sure that things work. So in the next episode, I will be finished troubleshooting and trouble ticketing all of this stuff, and presumably by the time the next episode starts, we know everything will be working in terms of the forms and submissions, and then we will do the migration. So thanks for watching episode 6 here, and actually it's episode 7, and I'll catch you soon.